He signed a termination letter that ended a 20-year partnership. He watched a legal war erupt over the very trusts meant to protect a dead man's children. He was accused, investigated, distrusted, and pushed out. Not once, but again and again. And yet, in 2026, one signature is all it takes to move billions of dollars tied to Michael Jackson's name. One man holds that pen. Is John Branca the reason Michael Jackson's empire survived, or the reason it was never truly his family's to control? Stick around, because untangling this story means going back more than 4 decades, to a moment nobody thought would matter this much. Let's start with the man before the money. In the early 1980s, Michael Jackson was already famous, but fame and fortune were not the same thing back then. He had grown up performing, but like almost every recording artist of that era, he did not own the rights to his own work. The label held the leverage. The artist held the microphone. That imbalance is exactly where John Branca stepped in. Branca was not a celebrity lawyer chasing headlines. He was a young entertainment attorney known for reading contracts other lawyers skimmed, and for asking questions that made record executives uncomfortable. When Jackson brought him on, it wasn't a flashy hire. It was a calculated one, and it paid off almost immediately. Branca renegotiated Jackson's recording deals in ways that shifted long-term value back toward the artist instead of the label. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was foundational. Every dollar that would later come from Jackson's music, his image, and his catalog traces back to contracts Branca helped rebuild in those early years. Then came the album that changed everything. And when Thriller was in production, its now legendary short film was considered a financial gamble. Studios and label executives saw a 14-minute minifilm as an unnecessary expense for what was supposed to be a simple promotional clip. Branca worked behind the scenes to make the financing possible, understanding correctly that this wasn't just marketing. It was history in the making. Thriller became the best-selling album of all time, and quietly, the lawyer who helped make its most iconic moment possible became something more than outside counsel. He became part of Jackson's inner circle, but nothing defines Branca's legacy more than what happened in 1985. Branca guided Jackson through the acquisition of ATV Music Publishing, a catalog containing the publishing rights to hundreds of Lennon-McCartney songs. The Beatles catalog. The price tag, close to $47 million, was considered outrageous by industry insiders. Critics said Jackson had lost his mind. They said no pop star had any business owning a piece of music history that valuable. They were wrong. That catalog eventually merged into Sony, ATV, and over the following decades, its value multiplied far beyond what anyone imagined in 1985. It remains one of the most consequential acquisitions in music business history. And it happened because a young lawyer convinced a young superstar to take a risk almost nobody else believed in. Branca kept building. He negotiated Jackson's purchase of Neverland Ranch, talking the price down from an original $60 million ask to roughly $17.5 million, furniture included. He handled uncomfortable, deeply personal business too, including formally cutting Joe Jackson out of his son's professional affairs, a termination that, fittingly, foreshadowed exactly how Branca himself would eventually be let go. For years, the bond between Jackson and Branca looked unshakable. Branca stood as best man at Jackson's wedding in 1987. This wasn't just a business relationship built on invoices and commissions. There was real trust there, forged through years of enormous risk and enormous reward. But trust, in Michael Jackson's world, rarely stayed simple for long. The first break came in 1990. Jackson dismissed Branca, though the details were far less dramatic than what would follow. The two reconciled a few years later, and Branca returned. It looked like a bump in the road, not a pattern, but patterns have a way of repeating themselves. By 2003, everything unraveled. Jackson was under criminal investigation, surrounded by chaos, and increasingly isolated by suspicion. In the middle of that storm, he made a decision that stunned people who had followed his career for decades. He fired John Branca, not in person, not over the phone, but by fax. The man who helped him buy the Beatles catalog, who helped finance Thriller's short film, who had stood beside him through countless high-stakes negotiations, was let go with a single sheet of paper. The reasoning was as unsettling as the method. Jackson had grown convinced that Branca might be working against him, possibly even coordinating with Sony in ways that could hurt him financially. Whether those suspicions held any real weight has been debated for years. At the time, though, the accusation was enough. In Branca's place came a new circle of advisors, some of whom raised even more concern among people close to Jackson. The proven hand was gone. What replaced it was far less stable. Then, in 2005, Branca made a move that would follow him for the rest of his career. In the middle of Jackson's criminal trial, Branca filed a UCC financing statement against Jackson and his trusts. A legal claim signaling that Branca believed he was still owed money and that he had a right to Jackson's assets to recover it. For an empire built on intangible assets like song catalogs and royalties, this wasn't a minor dispute. It was a real threat, one that raised the uncomfortable possibility that Michael Jackson could be pushed toward financial ruin by the very lawyer who helped build his fortune. Picture that moment. A global superstar fighting for his freedom in a courtroom, while simultaneously fighting off a financial claim from a former confidant. Reports from that period suggest Jackson trusted almost no one, reportedly digging into Branca's background himself, rather than relying on anyone else to vet the people around him. And yet, this story does not end in betrayal. It ends in reconciliation, one of the strangest turns in the entire saga. As Jackson's financial situation worsened over the following years, with debt reportedly climbing past $500 million, the relationship between the two men slowly began to thaw. Branca returned again, only to be let go once more in 2006. The pattern held: fired, forgiven, fired again. Then came the final twist. In June of 2009, just days before Michael Jackson's death, as he prepared for what was supposed to be his greatest comeback, a series of sold-out concerts in London, Jackson made one last decision about his business affairs. He brought John Branca back. Days later, Jackson was gone. That timing turned out to be one of the most debated details in the entire story, because when Jackson's 2002 will was located, Branca's name was on it, listed as one of 2 executors responsible for managing everything Jackson had built. A man who had been fired multiple times, who had filed a legal claim against Jackson's own trusts, was now entrusted with controlling his entire legacy. For a large part of the fan community, that has never sat right. But whatever doubts existed, the financial results that followed are hard to dismiss. When Jackson died, his estate wasn't thriving. It was drowning in more than $500 million of debt, the product of years of extravagant spending and chaotic decision-making. Many assumed recovery would take decades, if it happened at all. Instead, under Branca and co-executor John McClane, the estate didn't just recover, it exploded. Licensing deals, posthumous releases, a Cirque du Soleil production, and a relentless focus on protecting Jackson's intellectual property rebuilt the brand from the ground up. Today, the estate is valued at more than $2 billion, with total earnings since Jackson's death surpassing $3 billion. Even seasoned industry observers have called it one of the most remarkable financial turnarounds in entertainment history. But success has never silenced the controversy. Jackson's own mother, Catherine, once took legal steps to force the executors into depositions, accusing them of withholding information about her son's affairs. And in recent years, the sharpest criticism has come from closer still. Jackson's daughter, Paris, who has accused the estate's leadership of financial mismanagement and self-serving decisions, many tied to the production of a recent biopic about her father's life. Reports describe a dispute involving hundreds of thousands of dollars in questioned payments, alongside broader concerns about transparency and executor compensation. Now, the story has entered its most consequential chapter yet. In 2026, Branca's longtime co-executor John McClane passed away. With the third original executor having already stepped away years earlier, something unprecedented happened. For the first time since Michael Jackson's death, John Branca stands alone as sole executor of the entire estate. No second signature, no second set of eyes, just one man holding legal authority over billions of dollars tied to Michael Jackson's name, and the power to choose who eventually inherits that control. To be fair, Branca's career extends far beyond Jackson. He has represented dozens of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees over the decades, building a reputation as one of the most effective dealmakers in the music business. His defenders point to the numbers. A $500 million debt transformed into a multi-billion-dollar empire speaks for itself. His critics see it differently. They point to the pattern of firings, the UCC filing, the allegations from Jackson's own daughter, and the uncomfortable truth that a man Jackson once suspected of working against him now holds unchecked authority over everything he built. They ask a simple but uncomfortable question. Does financial success alone justify this level of control over someone else's legacy, someone else's family, and someone else's children? There is no easy answer here, and that's exactly what makes this story so hard to file away as simple heroism or simple betrayal. Branca may be the reason Michael Jackson's name still generates billions of dollars nearly 2 decades after his death. He may also be the final gatekeeper of a legacy that was never fully his to hold. Maybe both of those things are true at the same time. What's certain is this: the empire stands, richer than ever, and for now it rests entirely in the hands of one man.